I walked in on my gay crush making out with my bullies. It was another day of school and yet another day of harassment from Chris and his pack of bullies. I was casually combing my hair in the school toilet between classes as I wanted to freshen up for my next class. Of course, my crush for the longest time, Alex, was going to be in my literature class, and although he had never paid attention to me, I wanted to look nice. I sighed because I heard a group of laughter before they even walked in. That was mistakenly Chris and his equally vicious friends. I tried to reach for the door handle before they could walk in, but to no avail. The door swung open violently, and in came Chris, with his usual strut. "Going anywhere, pretty boy?" Chris teased. He earned a round of laughter from his cronies. "Excuse me," I whispered timidly, not wanting to get stuck in a room with him any longer. Hanford, one of Chris's friends, blocked the entire door, and I was not going to lie, his massive body did intimidate me. "Not so fast," Chris ordered. "Your lunch money. Hand it over." I opened my mouth to protest. "No, I need that money. I didn't even have breakfast." "Do I look like I care? You're a gay ass. Don't think I didn't spot you looking at me this morning during assembly," Chris accused. "This lame nerd probably likes you, Chris," said Peter, another one of Chris's cronies. They then closed the door and surrounded me. I could not believe my luck. How was this happening in high school? Have they not grown up? "If you really like me, hand the money over," Chris threatened. I do not know what came over me, but I wanted to stand up for myself this once. I desperately needed the money for a literature contest I was joining next week. It was my registration fee. "No," I retorted. Chris looked aghast that I fought back and decided to kick my shin, sending me straight to the floor groaning. He was not contented and even got one of his minions to give me a slap. I groaned once more and clung to my bag, but Hanford won the struggle and retrieved my money. "Give him another," Chris was ordering, but was interrupted when the door swung open and revealed Alex. He was confused initially, but put two and two together. "Chris Trevor, are you serious?" he questioned the group. "You guys are seniors and you're still into bullying? Get out." One thing about Alex is that he was very well respected in the school. Even popular guys who also happened to be big bullies such as Chris feared him. Well, I guess they should, because not only was Alex the school heartthrob, but he was also doing well in his academics. He was part of the school paper and excelled in sports. I was in utter disbelief as I watched Chris and his friends leave the bathroom, glaring daggers at Alex. "I'll let you off this time, Henderson," Chris threatened Alex, before he slammed the door at the bathroom shut. Try it as I might to avoid Alex's gaze, he squatted down in an attempt to check possible injuries. "May I?" Alex asked for permission to touch my leg. I nodded, amazed that this man was concerned enough for me. "You should stay away from Chris Trevor and his friend Martin. They're no good," he commented. "Your foot is fine." My eyes widened, shocked that he even knew who I was. I thought for most of the school, especially to the popular guys like Alex, I was invisible, but his concern proved otherwise. "Thanks, sorry for troubling you," I replied. He shrugged and said it was no problem. He even offered to walk me to class. I could not believe the sudden turn of events. All these times, no one really stood up for me. I mean, who wanted to stand up for a guy who couldn't even want to stand up for himself? But apparently, Alex was different. "You shouldn't let him bring you down, Martin. I read the work you've submitted for the school paper before. You're an excellent writer," he complimented. Now this had me blushing. I had been writing for the school paper since I was a freshman. Just a few months ago, Alex became the editor-in-chief, so all the entries had to go through him. I never thought he would recognize my work. "Thank you," I said meekly. I do not know what came over me, but I then added, "Come over to the journalism club room this afternoon, if you'd like to hang out." Alex flashed me a wide grin. I never thought I would see the day that brilliant smile would be directed towards me. "See you, Martin," he winked. We then went into our shared classroom, but sat in different places. What happened was still surreal. Did my crush really defend me from my unrelenting torment of my bullies? That afternoon, I visited the journalism club and handed in one of the pieces that I wanted them to review. I was not formally part of the club, but I tried my best to turn in work whenever an opportunity arises, and it may just end up as part of the school paper. Before I could even reach the room, I bumped into Chris. Admittedly, it was my bad, as I was busy reading the paper I was going to submit. I had to triple check it, seeing as Alex would probably read it, hence I did not notice that I bumped into Chris immediately. I apologized profusely. "How dare you? Watch where you're bumping against, pathetic ass," he shouted. "I'm sorry," I repeated. "I was just busy reading my submission, but yeah, it's completely my bad." Chris raised his eyebrow and immediately snatched the papers from me. I watched as one by one he tore the papers into shreds. "Now maybe you can look where you're going and never touch me again," he berated. At that moment, Alex emerged from one of the rooms and pushed Chris off. "Get lost, man. What the hell's wrong with you?" he questioned. Chris simply shrugged before walking off, his usual swagger in place. Alex shook his head in disbelief and disappointed. He then helped me pick up the pieces of my papers. How do you let him treat you like that? You deserve better, he mumbled. He then helped me up and led me toward the journalism room. Other than the two of us, it was empty. I brought coffee for you. Didn't know what your order was, but I know you love it. I see you in literature class with coffee all the time, Alex confessed. My heart started thumping wildly against my chest. I could hardly believe that this man was taking notice of me. Thank you, Alex. You've done so much for me. We only got acquainted for a few hours? I replied. He shrugged. Feels like I've known you forever. Throughout the afternoon, Alex showed me some of his work, and I truly felt like I have known him for a long time. It was a bizarre feeling because I actually felt like I was a damsel in distress and he was my Prince Charming. He even encouraged me to join a writing contest organized by the club, and I said I would think about it. Before we parted ways, I mustered enough courage to ask him to have lunch with me the next day. He did not seem to think much about it and agreed right away, much to my joy. During lunch the next day, Alex carefully slid yet another coffee towards me, which immensely surprised me. Was he always like this to everyone? Coffee? Again? I questioned, attempting to hide my biggest grin. He smirked, which made my heart leap. He had that boyish look that I was certain got all the girls giddy. "A thank you would be nice, Martin," he teased and then winked. I looked down at my lap, a flush overcoming my cheeks. "Thank you," I said. "It seems like you really like granting me favors, huh?" "What did I do to deserve this?" "You deserve every bit of it and more," Alex said shortly. "It's the least I can do after all that you have to go through, with the bullying and stuff." "You don't have to do anything about that. Besides, it's not your fault that Chris Trevor is such an asshole," I replied. "I just hope he isn't coming to the dance tonight." Alex looked surprised. "Oh, you're going to that. I didn't peg you for the type," he remarked. At this point, my hands were sweating profusely. I actually told my best friend Nancy about the dance and how I thought of asking Alex to come with me. I did not know where I mustered up the courage, but it must have stemmed from Alex's caring and concerned behavior towards me. It made me want to be with him. It made me hope that there could happen between us. So I took up the chance. "Would you like to go with me? I mean, you're probably already going, seeing as you're Alex and I'm just me, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to go with me, so I don't know why I even bothered asking." I rambled quickly, which made Alex chuckle, and then he put a finger on my lips to shush me. He then nodded. "I'd love to. See you there. It's a date." I was nervous to say the least. I'd been looking forward to this day for ages, since I had developed a schoolboy crush on Alex. But it was finally here. When I arrived at the party, it was boisterous as usual. Alex texted me that he had already arrived 15 minutes ago, so I scoured the rooms looking for him. I did not have many friends, so not many people greeted me along the way. Desperately, I looked everywhere for Alex, but to no avail. I decided to text him and wait in the kitchen, but I was receiving no response whatsoever after a few minutes. Suddenly, Peter and Hanford, who were also my bullies and Chris's best friends, entered the kitchen and swaggered toward me. My palms started sweating at this point. I did not want my first date with Alex to be ruined by my bullies, who have made me miserable throughout high school. I wanted to own this night without any tarnished memories because of them, and so I tried my best to not meet their eye, lest the eye contact trigger them to provoke me. However, I was surprised that Peter actually gently tapped my shoulder. "Yo, you looking for Alex?" he asked. Never would I have thought that he was capable of talking to me like I was a human being. Most of the time they just shouted and threw slurs at me like I was inhumane. Tongue-tied, I nodded. "He's in the third room to the right, waiting for you," Hanford advised. I nodded and muttered a quick thanks. I scurried towards the hallway that the two pointed at in search of Alex. Maybe my friend Nancy was right. By getting associated with Alex, who was highly regarded within the school and pretty much the golden boy of our class, my bullies could possibly be deterred. Don't get me wrong, I liked Alex for who he was, not for what he was bringing to the table. Getting some peace from my bullies was just an added bonus. When I reached the room and just before I turned the handle on the door, I heard a distinct laugh that sounded a lot like Chris. I hesitated for a split second, but ultimately decided to turn the door handle. I was probably hearing things. Hanford and Peter said Alex was in this room, probably waiting for me. There was no way Chris was in there too. Alex and Chris did not even get along. But I could not be more wrong. Alex exclaimed as I witnessed Chris and Alex cuddled up on the couch, Alex's lips engulfed by Chris. "Get away from Alex, Chris." The two looked at each other and then burst into laughter. I was perplexed. What was happening? Why the hell were the two of them kissing? How come Alex was in proximity to Chris? I thought, he did not even like Chris. This was a nightmare. This could not be real. "Look at you, Martin. Ever pathetic. Really think someone like Alex would go out with you?" Chris retorted, as his hands went up and down Alex's chest. I was seething. I could bear all the bullying, but this time, seeing Alex being touched by someone else made me enraged. I said, "Get away from him. This is our night," I shouted. "Tell him, Alex," Chris said as he placed yet another kiss on Alex's lips. "You get out, you disgusting piece of shit. You were too easy to get. Chris is right. You really are pathetic and desperate for my attention," spat Alex. I was in disbelief. How could he do this? Granted, I had only become close to him for a few days, but I was still in absolute horror and disgust that he could say such a hurtful thing. "I can't believe this. You're better than this, Alex," I muttered, my voice cracking. My misery clearly made Chris laugh, and he started taking a video of me, possibly to make fun of with his minions. "No, you're delusional," Alex replied. "Leave me and Chris alone." Without another word, I ran out of the house and out of the party. My dream date turned into an utter nightmare, and I could not believe my luck. Of all people that Alex could hook up with, why did he pick my bully? It turned out that the house party was just the beginning of the torture I had to endure. After the party, Chris and his friends took the liberty of spreading the video of me tearing up. They even made up lies saying that I was so desperate for Alex's attention that I stripped there and then. It was beyond pathetic, and the only one to really stand by me was my best friend Nancy. "Ignore the stares. They'll go away, Martin," Nancy advised as we walked through the school halls. All the curious eyes were on me, clearly intrigued by the stories and lies that have spread. Just then, a familiar group was walking towards us, but this time Chris and Alex were side by side. "Had a great weekend, Martin?" asked Chris teasingly as he sipped on his iced coffee. I was silent, not wanting any more drama. I could feel Alex's eyes on me, but I did my best to avoid them. After the stunt he pulled, I was not sure if I could look at him in the same way. "Well, I certainly did," Chris answered, his own question, and just to rub it in my face, he took Alex's hand in his. My eyes lingered on their intertwined hands and tried to walk on, but not before I tripped on Chris's foot, which was almost certain he extended so I could fall. However, just before I tripped and fell flat on my face, I also dragged Chris's leg with me, causing his iced coffee to topple over his own crisp white shirt. I tried my best to hide my satisfied smile, but I could not. "You son of a bitch," screamed Chris as he pulled my hair and tried to force me to stay on the ground. "Chris, let's go, babe," said Alex as he pried Chris off me. "This isn't over. Clearly, I still won anyway," Chris bragged as he held Alex's hand once more. I got up and sighed. I watched as they walked away, and I was left there with Nancy and my broken hopes of getting with Alex. The next day, when I got to my literature class, a cup of coffee was on my desk. I was confused as there was no note there, and only Alex was in the classroom. I did not want to talk to him, and I did not want to bother apologizing, so I ignored him anyway. Still, the coffee was a mystery. It was probably from Nancy, who wanted to make me feel like someone still cared about me, despite everything that was happening. Beside the coffee, which I started receiving regularly, but still could not quite figure out the source, I also started getting random notes of encouragement in my locker. The handwriting looked oddly familiar, but I could not quite remember where I had seen them. I was reading another sticky note of encouragement that said, "When people hurt you over and over, think of them like sandpaper. They may scratch and hurt you a bit, but in the end, you end up polished and they end up useless." Apparently, I was so engrossed in the note that I did not feel the presence of Chris and his minions. Before I knew it, Hanford snatched the sticky note from my hand and crumpled it. "Writing notes to yourself now, stupid?" said Chris. "Who would want to write to you anyway, right? You're practically friendless, save for that dodo head Nancy," added Peter. Meanwhile, me, Alex, and I have started dating. We're well loved by everyone in the school, and I have friends. You and I just aren't the same, spat Chris. His words normally did not get to me anymore since I was already numb by all the bullying, but whenever he brought up Alex, I could not help but feel weak, so I started tearing up. Later that day, shortly after I got home, my mom called me and said that I had a visitor. Nancy typically did not visit, so I was curious to know who was at my door. Surprisingly, it was Alex. He was looking melancholic, and I could not even believe that he was in front of me after everything that had happened. I wanted to slam the door in his face and try to make him feel even just a fraction of what his betrayal had done to me, but I just could not. "Martin, please hear me out," he pleaded. "What are you doing here, Alex?" I asked impatiently. "Chris wouldn't want you here. Please leave." "Martin, I need you to trust me, okay? I can't stay that long and I can't give away too much either, but please trust me," Alex said meekly. "What? What's happening?" I questioned, confused. "Trust me for now, please. Don't be too upset, okay? It has to get worse before it gets better." I wanted to bombard him with more questions, but I could not as he rushed to leave the porch, leaving me there, hanging. When Alex ditched me for Chris, I started putting more focus on my writing. Thankfully, I finished a piece that I was ready to submit for publishing in the school paper, and I could not be any happier. Alex used to be my solace, but when he sided with Chris, I turned to writing instead. I went to my locker to retrieve my paper so I could submit it to the faculty member in charge, but alas, I could not find it. I even went as far as to emptying my entire locker, but to no avail. "Looking for this?" said a voice I knew all too well. It was Chris, holding up the article I had worked so hard on. "The article you wanted to submit for publishing in the school paper, huh?" "Oops, I got it now," he teased. "Give it back, Chris," I shouted as I lunged towards him, but I was stopped by Hanford and Peter as usual. Not only were they his little minions, but they acted like his security too. "No, I don't think so. Lame as you are, the one thing you can do is right. In fact, I kinda want to hand it in," he said, "under my name." "No, please don't. I worked so hard for this. Don't do this, Chris," I pleaded with all my heart. "You wouldn't even have proof that it's yours, because I'll be submitting it now," Chris winked. He walked away, presumably to take credit for my writing. Meanwhile, Hanford and Peter stayed behind to make sure I did not stop Chris. Not that I would have bothered fighting back. Chris had basically taken everything from me, and I could not help but break down then and there. This seemed to scare Hanford and Peter, so thankfully they finally let me alone. I also got more curious stares from curious onlookers, more sympathetic glances than I did previous weeks. I must have really caused a scene because Alex even approached me. "What happened?" he asked as he patted my back. I told him of the havoc that just unraveled, especially about how I lost my precious work to Chris, scheming. Alex looked furious the whole time. "I'll do something about it," said Alex, determined. I simply nodded, not knowing what else to say, because honestly, Alex had already let me down multiple times and I knew better than to depend on him. Alas, Alex came through, this time around. When the school paper was published the following week, Nancy told me to check it out immediately. My original work was there, and it all seemed like Chris did not succeed in sabotaging me. But what really caught my attention and was the talk of the town was Alex's article exposing Chris and his bullying ways. He did not explicitly name Chris, of course, as that would basically earn him a lawsuit, but he described him and his minions vividly enough that the whole student body just knew. In his article, Alex detailed how he attempted and succeeded to infiltrate their circle by pretending to be interested in Chris romantically. Then he used the opportunity to discover how immoral the circle really was. From the things they say about their fellow students to their comments about their teachers. They really had no filter, and Alex exposed them. After I read the article, I was speechless. I always knew that Chris was a massive bully, but he was a much worse person now that he had been exposed. I was also flabbergasted by Alex's bravery, and was low-key frightened that Chris would try to get back at him. But I knew now that it was all a facade. Alex really did not like Chris, after all. He just wanted to expose him and know his secrets. That was what he meant when he told me to trust him. I rushed to literature class, desperate to talk to Alex and wanting to talk to him about everything. When I got there, I spotted him placing a cup of coffee on my desk. "Was you all along?" I asked, revealing that I had seen him. He smiled sheepishly and nodded. "I don't know how to reach you after what happened at the party. I tried to leave you notes, get you coffee, and maybe then you'd feel that I was still there for you, even though I was pretending to be on Chris's side," Alex explained. "Alex, thank you," I said as I approached him with a hug. "Anything for you," he replied. And as we pulled away from the hug, our eyes met. I don't know what came over me, but I leaned in and placed my lips against his. It was a decision I do not regret. "I want to do that again," I said as I was breathlessly pulled apart after the most electrifying kiss. "Me too. Forever." The news that Alex and I were together spread like wildfire, and just like that I felt accepted by the school body once more. However, the news clearly enraged Chris, who was just reeling from Alex's betrayal of him and his being exposed in the school paper, albeit not name-dropped. In true Chris fashion, he would not go down without a fight. One way or another, he had obtained photos of Alex and me kissing and tried to twist the narrative by framing us as cheaters. Thankfully, none of the students really believed Chris lies anymore, save for his minions. However, the photos still spread online, and even outsiders who did not go to our school heard the scandal spread by Chris. The issue got so big that even Alex's coach and the basketball team heard of it. As I was watching their practice one afternoon, waiting for Alex, the coach recognized me. "Aren't you Martin, the guy Alex is involved with?" he asked. I nodded and even extended my hand to introduce myself, but Coach Hand simply glared at my extended hand. "Well, I don't want you getting involved with my star player. Let's get that straight." "Pardon?" I said. "I don't tolerate gays in my squad, and if you're going to mess around with Alex, he's going to have to go," Coach Hand said. "With all due respect, sir, I believe you're their coach on the court, and you don't get to make decisions for them off the court." "No way in fuck am I tolerating another gay behavior from my team. This is a man's sport, damn it, and I'm not having some lame gays parading my court and ruining my damn sport," he screamed. This caught the attention of many of Alex's teammates, who then started protesting against their coach. Like me, they were also in disbelief that this man was actually homophobic. He always seemed so chill, but as soon as there were talks of the same-sex relationships, he showed his true colors. That's disgusting, coach. I thought you were the one encouraging us to be who we wanted to be. I thought that doesn't just apply in court, said one of the boys. Hear, hear. I thought you accepted us for whoever we were, so that's all a lie? Many more of Alex's teammates rallied against Coach Han, and they even threatened to expose him to the principal. Coach Han was unmoving, however, so the team was forced to take it up to the principal, Miss Tyler. It was a stark contrast to Coach Han. While the coach was clearly prejudiced and unreasonable, Miss Tyler was a very compassionate individual who knew what power she held over the school and its students. I don't tolerate discrimination. In fact, I have kids who are gay and lesbian myself, so to hear about a coach discriminating against his player just because of their sexuality is indeed heartbreaking. I'm going to have to let you go, Han, she dropped, and whoever spread Alex and Chris's photos, I'll be suspending them. The entire basketball team was relieved that Alex was still going to play, and that Coach Han was finally replaced by someone who cares about them a lot more and accepts them for who they are. Meanwhile, Chris was suspended on the grounds of spreading me and Chris's pictures. It seemed like everything was finally falling into place. Finally, justice, said Alex, as he pressed a kiss on my forehead. I enjoyed times like this when we just enjoyed each other's company. Evidently, our relationship started off rocky since it was full of drama, but I learned to treasure afternoons when he just finished his practice and I could just be in his arms, just you and me. Soon, prom came around and naturally Alex and I attended together. He even asked me out dramatically with a poem and flowers and all. We were happily dancing the night away, dressed to the nines and enjoying each other's company. I've always observed you in literature class, you know. I'm so thankful to call you mine now, whispered Alex as we danced and he rested his forehead against mine. And I've had a crush on you for forever, I admitted. Why didn't you tell me, he asked as he ran his hands through my hair. We could have been together for a while now. I was scared you wouldn't love me back, I replied. Impossible. I feel like we've known you my whole life and that we were always destined to be together, I told him. With that, he pressed a soft kiss to my lips. Those lips were my home now, and I could not live a day without his sincere kisses and tight hugs. Apparently our joy was short-lived because that very moment, Chris walked in despite being suspended. Some guys tried to stop him, but he hurt them and was determined in making his way towards me. Alex tried to get in front of me in an attempt to protect me, but it was too late. Chris already spilled the entire content of a wine bottle on my immaculate white suit. That doesn't even account for everything you've done. You've ruined my life, Chris screamed at me. The teachers tried to stop him this time around, and thankfully he left me alone after that. Unfortunately, the damage has been done and my suit was already ruined. I thought of it as inconsequential because what was important was I was with Alex, and that's all that mattered. To aggravate things further for Chris, the prom organizing committee did not like the stunt he pulled, and even awarded me as best dressed, which clearly frustrated him. The whole senior class cheered as I was called on stage, despite my white suit being stained. It was admittedly one of the best looks of the night, and I was beyond honored. I could not be any happier as I took pictures with Alex on stage, and with my award. At the back, Chris could not stand another second of seeing me happy. He then walked out before the night was over. Little did we know that he had one final trick up his sleeve. When the program ended, Alex led me to his car, and he was going to take me home, as he had promised to my parents. As usual, he was the most gentlemanly person I know, opening the car door for me and making sure that I was comfortable. However, halfway through the ride, we noticed a car trailing us precariously, and it was as though it wanted Alex's car to crash. Luckily, Alex drove seamlessly and managed to avoid crashing with it, or on the bridge where we were driving at. Unfortunately for the car, it crashed against one of the bridge's pillars, unable to dodge it. We later found out that the car was Chris, and that it was attempting to chase us so that he could get us into an accident. Unlucky for him, he was the one who crashed instead, and was injured by the wreck, and was taken immediately to the hospital. Karma truly works in mysterious ways. Chris got the worst karma, and somehow I got the best in the form of Alex. I would never know how I managed to score someone like him. You okay? He asked me again as we drove away from the scene of Chris's wreck. Never better, I smiled. Conclusion. After the crash, Chris was taken to the hospital and it was discovered that he had plenty of alcohol in his system. This therefore triggered an immediate case of driving under the influence, which gave him a decent amount of jail time. However, to aggravate this case further, illegal drugs were found in his car wreck, which added even more jail time to his sentence. As for me and Alex, our relationship has never been better. Over the past few weeks, we've gotten to know each other more, and we have bonded over our shared love for writing. He even elected me as his co-editor-in-chief of the school paper since he saw a lot of potential in me. As for Chris's minions, Hanford and Peter, they are pretty much the outcasts now. How tables have turned, right? The school body, inspired by Alex's bravery in exposing Chris' bullying ways, did not tolerate bullies anymore and stood up for what they genuinely think is right. I never thought that being bullied could ever lead me to the love of my life, and that together we would work hand in hand and head over heels in love to eradicate the bullying around in our school. The end. How should bullies be dealt with? Leave a comment and let us know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.